The birth of Muhammad. Muhammad was born in the city of Mecca, in the land of Arabia, in the year 570. His father's name was Abdullah, and his mother's name was Amina. They were both from the noble tribe of Quraysh, who were the guardians of the Kaaba, the sacred house of God. Muhammad's father died before he was born, so he never saw him. His mother loved him very much and took good care of him. The journey to the desert when Muhammad was 6 months old, his mother sent him to live with a woman named Halima in the desert. This was a common practice among the Arabs, who believed that the desert air and the camel milk would make the children stronger and healthier. Halima was a kind and gentle woman who had a husband and 2 children of her own. She nursed Muhammad along with her son, and they became like brothers. Muhammad grew up in the desert, playing with the animals and learning the language and manners of the Bedouins. The splitting of the chest one day, when Muhammad was 4 or 5 years old, he was playing with his foster brother in the fields. Suddenly, 2 men dressed in white appeared and took him away. They laid him down on the ground and opened his chest. They took out his heart and washed it with snow. Then they put it back and closed his chest. They said, "We have taken out from you the part that may incline to evil, and we have filled your heart with light and wisdom." Halima's son saw everything and ran to tell his parents. They came and found Muhammad sitting calmly as if nothing had happened. They were amazed and scared by what they had witnessed. They decided to take him back to his mother in Mecca, thinking that he was a special child who needed her protection. The death of Amina. Muhammad stayed with his mother in Mecca for a few years. He loved her dearly, and she taught him many things about his family and his ancestors. She also told him stories about Abraham, Ishmael, Moses, Jesus, and other prophets who had received messages from God. One day, when Muhammad was 6 years old, his mother decided to take him to visit his father's grave in Yathrib, a city north of Mecca. On their way back, they stopped at a place called Abwa. There, Amina became ill and died. Muhammad was very sad and cried for his mother. He buried her next to his father and returned to Mecca with his grandfather Abdul Muttalib, who took him under his care. The boyhood of Muhammad. Muhammad grew up in his grandfather's house, surrounded by love and respect. He was a handsome boy with a bright face and a noble character. He was honest, truthful, generous, kind, brave, and modest. He never lied or cheated or hurt anyone. He helped the poor and the needy and stood up for justice. He avoided the bad habits of the people of Mecca, who worshipped idols and drank alcohol and gambled and fought with each other. He preferred to spend his time in prayer and meditation, seeking guidance from God. He also learned to read and write Arabic, as well as some other languages like Hebrew and Persian. He also learned about trade and business from his uncle Abu Talib, who was a merchant and a leader of Quraysh. The marriage of Muhammad. When Muhammad was 25 years old, he started working for a wealthy woman named Khadija, who was 40 years old and a widow with 2 children. She hired him to take her goods to Syria and sell them there for a profit. Muhammad proved to be an excellent trader who earned more money than anyone else. He also impressed Khadija with his honesty, integrity, wisdom, and manners. She fell in love with him and proposed marriage to him through her friend Nafisa. Muhammad accepted her proposal after consulting with his uncle Abu Talib. They got married in a simple ceremony attended by their relatives and friends. They were very happy together and had 6 children, 2 sons named Qasim and Abdullah, who died in infancy, and 4 daughters named Zainab, Ruqayya, Kulthum, and Fatima. The revelation of Muhammad. When Muhammad was 40 years old, he started having strange dreams that came true. He also felt a strong urge to leave the city and go to the mountains where he could be alone with God. He often went to a cave called Hira, where he prayed and meditated for days and nights. One night, during the month of Ramadan, he was in the cave when he heard a voice say, "Read." He looked around and saw a bright figure standing before him. He was scared and said, "I cannot read." The figure said again, "Read." Muhammad repeated, "I cannot read." The figure said for the third time, "Read." Muhammad asked, "What should I read?" The figure said, "Read in the name of your Lord who created. He created man from a clot. Read, and your Lord is the most generous. He who taught by the pen. He taught man what he did not know." These were the first verses of the Quran, the holy book of Islam. The figure was the angel Gabriel, who had come to deliver the message of God to Muhammad. Muhammad was terrified and ran out of the cave. He went back to his wife Khadija and told her what had happened. She comforted him and assured him that he was not crazy or possessed by a devil. She said, "You are a good man who helps the poor and the orphan and the widow. God will not forsake you or harm you. You are the messenger of God." She took him to her cousin Waraka, who was a Christian scholar. Waraka confirmed that Muhammad had received the same revelation as Moses and Jesus and other prophets before him. He also warned him that his people would oppose him and persecute him for his message. The preaching of Muhammad. Muhammad continued to receive revelations from God through Gabriel for the next 23 years. He memorized them and recited them to his followers, who wrote them down on bones, leaves, leather, and parchment. The revelations explained the oneness of God, the purpose of life, the stories of previous prophets, the moral values and laws of Islam, the signs of the Day of Judgment, the rewards of paradise and the punishments of hell, and many other topics. Muhammad began to preach his message to his family and friends first. His wife Khadija was the first to believe in him and support him. His cousin Ali was the first boy to accept Islam. His friend Abu Bakr was the first man to embrace Islam. His slave Zaid was the first freedman to follow Islam. His adopted son Usama was the first child to be born in Islam. They were among the first Muslims who formed a small community of believers in Mecca. The migration of Muhammad. Muhammad faced a lot of opposition and hostility from his people in Mecca. They mocked him, insulted him, threatened him, beat him, boycotted him, and plotted to kill him. They also tortured and killed some of his followers who were weak and poor. Muhammad endured all this with patience and perseverance. He never gave up his mission or compromised his message. He always prayed to God for help and guidance. He also looked for a new place where he could spread Islam peacefully and freely. He sent some of his followers to Abyssinia, Ethiopia, where they found refuge under a Christian king named Negus. He also sent some of his followers to Yathrib, Medina, where they found support from two tribes named Aws and Khazraj, who had accepted Islam after hearing his message from some pilgrims. In 622, after 13 years of preaching in Mecca, Muhammad received permission from God to migrate to Medina with his remaining followers. He left Mecca secretly with Abu Bakr at night, while his enemies were planning to assassinate him in his bed. They hid in a cave for 3 days until they were safe from their pursuers. Then they continued their journey to Medina, where they were welcomed by the Muslims and the Jews who lived there. Muhammad established a mosque, a place of worship, and a state, a community of believers, in Medina. He also made a constitution, a set of rules. that guaranteed the rights and duties of all citizens regardless of their religion or race or gender or status.